Hey, I'm Shaye Wanner, and you are listening to the Casual Cattle Conversations podcast. Whether you are a seasoned rancher or just curious about the cattle world, this podcast dives into the stories, science, and strategies shaping the future of ranching. Let's get started and keep your herd ahead of the herd. Folks, I am so excited to have you back for another episode, and if you're new to the show, welcome. We are going to be visiting with Jason Wrich about wedding venues as an alternative revenue source. And he also does Airbnb hosting, executive retreats, kind of the whole gamut. He does a lot of different things. And I shouldn't say just Jason, because his wife is a major part of their business as well. So Jason is going to be completely honest about the challenges that go into starting businesses like this, as well as what ranchers need to be aware of before they start it, because quite honestly, it's not going to be for everyone. Remember that if you are looking for a speaker for your next event, whether that is a panelist, a keynote, or a workshop, I would love to come visit with your group of beef producers. I love visiting with a variety of ages and a variety of groups. So if you're interested in looking for another speaker, please head to my website. That link is in the show notes, and you can contact me through the form there. But with that, let's visit with Jason. Westway, we believe liquid feed has stood the test of time as a proven, effective, and efficient tool for delivering essential nutrients to livestock. Our molasses-based liquid feed provides essential protein, energy, and nutrients to keep your cattle healthy and productive. Liquid feed offers consistent, cost-effective nutrition, helping producers manage intake, control cost, and maximize feed resources. Learn more about why Westway is the best way to raise beef at www.westwayfeed.com or call 800-800-7517, and that information is also in the show notes. Jason, good morning, and thank you for joining me today for this conversation. I'm excited to talk about all things alternative revenue sources, but especially on the wedding venue aspect of it. And where are you joining us from today? I know you brought up earlier in the chit chat, you talked about how I can see the glories of being an Airbnb host, but tell us a little bit about where you're joining us from.
Yeah, so we are located in Crawford, Colorado, which is on the western slope of Colorado. I like to call it the good side. There's a lot less politics over here, but we're sitting in our home office, which has been converted to our Airbnb wedding venue storage room. You can see in the background we've got towels and laundry detergent and cleaning supplies and all of those things. My wife is super organized because she works an off-farm job. And then in addition to that, we do our Airbnb wedding venue short-term rental, conference space, executive retreat. We pretty much cater to anybody that wants to come and have a farm or ranch experience and do our best to help them get a little education while they're here.
Awesome. So the big hitting question that everyone kind of gets to start off with on this show for this year is, why do you bet on the beef industry?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question because we've essentially unplugged from the conventional beef industry in our operation. We started as a registered seed stock Black Angus operation and have shifted to a almost solely direct-to-consumer grass-fed and grass-finished beef operation. So I bet on beef for a couple of reasons. We do a lot of habitat restoration work, and we use cattle as a land tool in those operations. And then you have the benefit of this fantastic nutrient-dense, super healthy protein on the other end. And so I'm always betting on beef being a necessary land tool, and then also being able to share the wealth of those nutrients with friends and family and customers. And so I'm betting on beef because when you look at the dollars and cents of protein, beef is still the lowest cost production if managed appropriately, and they're a very necessary land tool to fix a lot of the harm that we've done to some of our pastures and row crop fields. And so I'm always betting on beef.
They are a very powerful tool and very helpful species that we were blessed with.
100%, and then that we're blessed to be able to steward them is truly the blessing.
Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing your story there, and I think that could be maybe a whole nother conversation for another day about your shift in, where you started with ranching and what you're doing now. But back to kind of that alternative revenue stream side of things, why did you and your wife decide to start hosting weddings?
So my wife and I are high school sweethearts, and we live on the home place that my in-laws bought in 1986. Well, the adjacent ranch, we have fantasized for 30 years about buying it. And when the commercial egg laying operations were looking at buying it and building confined egg laying barns on it, my wife says we just have to figure out a way to buy it and make it work. And so that's actually where we hatched the plan of short-term rentals, the wedding venue, and it's just it's just exploded from there. We waited, of course, until the interest rates are the highest that they've ever been in our lifetimes. But fortunately for us, the landowner agreed to carry enough of the note so we could qualify for an American Ag Credit agricultural loan, which was truly a blessing. But the only way we could come close to cash flowing that property would be to do what we're doing with the short-term rentals and the wedding venues, conferences. We actually have a family that's used to own the ranch back in the 40s that is coming back to do a family reunion this summer. So that'll be really fun to be able to meet them in person. And then a lot of their family still lives locally. And they've done a whole bunch of historical research on the property. They have old photographs. So that'll be a lot of fun to be able to meet them and talk about their stories, listen to their stories about the way it looked when they owned it versus now, the way that it looks now.
So were there already existing structures on there for short-term rentals to host the wedding, or is that something else you had to invest in right away in addition to making that large purchase?
So we are very fortunate there were already buildings. And in our county, there's some zoning restrictions that just really came into effect. So quite a few farms and ranches were already doing weddings, but they weren't in compliance with the new regulations. Whereas this property, a gentleman had bought it that was a land developer in the early 90s, and then had built a new house in the 90s, and then he built a shop and built a hay barn and built a machine shed, a machine storage building. And so there are already existing structures. There's already 4 domestic water taps. There's a domestic water well. There are 2 separate septic systems, one that services the house, one that services, we call it the foreman's quarters. So it's like an apartment that's built in the shop. And so it was well suited to do what we were wanting to do. We've just been doing a lot of updates like lights and ceiling fans. And in the equipment building, which is a 40 by 60 pole barn, steel sided and roofed metal building, we milled rough cut lumber and lined the inside of it with rough cut lumber. So it looks like the inside of a wood barn. So it's super attractive. I've actually been hanging ceiling fans and chandeliers in it this last week. And so it's really coming along. So we were very fortunate there were already buildings. They just needed some updates.
So what would you say was your biggest challenge that first year when you got the property and were like, okay, we want to start booking weddings?
Yeah, and so we purchased it in September of 23, and then it took us a couple of months to even just clean up, paint, and update the ranch house to start listing it for Airbnb or short-term rentals. And so, paying that mortgage for those months with no income, it was a real eye-opening experience. And that continues to be our hang-up because we're not quite cash flowing it, but because it came with an additional 160 acres of hay ground and pasture ground, it complements our direct-to-consumer beef business very well. So we're able to raise more of our own hay on our own owned acres and pasture more cattle. And so the beef business has been supplementing the short-term rental and wedding venue. we're projected for 2025 to come really close to generating enough revenue through short-term rentals and weddings, conferences, family reunions to actually pay the mortgage for the year. Which, if you look at startup businesses, most of them aren't projected to even break even for 3 years. So for us to be able to do that on year 2 would be pretty exceptional, and that's kind of our goal. But really, just you look at the dollars and cents of it. I mean, ag is tough anyways. The margins are pretty small, but in this business, there are no subsidized stopgaps. It's not like I can do income insurance or crop yield insurance or livestock insurance. It is like you have to make it work or else the bank gets it back. And so that's one thing that's always pushing up against us. But we had an open house, I guess it's been about 3 weeks ago, and we had a tremendous turnout. We had over 100 people. Some of them drove, 100 plus miles to come and see our venue, see what we were doing. And many of those were other farmers and ranchers who were looking to do the same thing, and they just were trying to figure out how to do it themselves. So we got to have those conversations to help other producers as well.
Tired of accounting software that wasn't built for ranching? Ambrook is the smart, simple tool that helps farmers and ranchers manage their finances like a pro. Is the pasture you're renting paying you back for the lease? Is your hay making or losing money, factoring in what you save for using it as feed? Is that old piece of equipment worth the maintenance costs? Ambrook can help you answer these questions and works on any computer or smartphone, so you can manage it on the go. Visit ambrook.com/casual cattle to try it for free for 1 month. That's ambrook.com/casual cattle. So are you close to a fairly populated area, or are you still significantly rural? Like, I just think about, how far away from, your bigger cities, whatever size that is this going to be feasible on the wedding side? I know the Airbnb side can be a little different because you can get travelers passing to and from, so sometimes that works out great. But on the wedding side, I mean, how far are you from a more populated area?
Well, that's a great question because like in our county, there's only like 25 or 27,000 people in the whole county. And so it's pretty rural. But like Grand Junction is an hour and 20 minutes away. Well, we actually have people that are going to have their wedding on our ranch that are coming from Denver, which is on the Front Range, and that's like a 5-hour drive. But with the level of furnishings and the tidiness of this property, and it's a very unique venue, but it's also set up. I mean, it was set up as a commercial cattle ranch to where you can get tractor trailers in and out to haul hay or haul cattle. And so everything is set up for easy egress, degress, plenty of parking. And so it's a destination wedding. It is a destination ranch wedding, and it's competitively priced that it's worth those people driving from the Front Range over here to host their weddings, because they charge by the hour there in Denver and Fort Collins, Colorado Springs. They are literally charging by the hour in those wedding venues. Whereas we have a package that includes 2-night stay in all 3 of our short-term rentals, including in the wedding package. So there's a place for the bride to get ready. There's a place for the groom and the groomsmen. There's a place for grandma to stay, whatever the arrangement is, which most other wedding venues don't have as much space for people to stay. And the other thing that we promote is if they're local people, they can bring their campers and stay the night so they don't have to drive home after the reception. And that's been super popular as well.
That competitive pricing has to be huge. I know my husband and I got married 1.5 years ago, and for the most part, we just wanted to use like the local facilities, but we did look at a few venues, and the pricing there, it was challenging to find one that would have been competitive or within budget. So I'm sure that helps you a lot, especially with the lodging aspect of it.
Yeah, and it really does. We don't have like upsells. So many of those venues are like, and then you can rent these wine barrels for this, and then you can rent these tables for this, and then you can pay extra for the tablecloths. Ours is all inclusive. Everything that we have is available for you to use. And that's the other thing that really sets us apart from many other venues is there's a lot less legwork required of the bride and groom planning their event because everything is here that they need. You know, you bring a dress and a tux or a Western jacket and a cake and a preacher and you're covered. I mean, we don't have a commercial kitchen, but we do have the two regular short-term rentals that have, you know, full-size ovens and stovetops. If they want to do something here, there's, you know, full-size fridge and freezers in both of the units for cold storage. And we've had people bring in smokers and smoke meat all day, the day of the reception. We've had people bring their Blackstones and cook. We've had people bring food trucks in, and then you just do plate service out of the food trucks. We've had people come and bring caterers, you know, with food already warm, and they just put their little sterno warming trays out, you know, and serve in one of the buildings and then have the reception in another building. We really open it up when we don't restrict anyone because we want their day to be perfect. We want their perfect day to be perfect, right? With as little headache as possible.
So how many people can you accommodate? Like, what do you advertise your capacity as for guests?
Right now, I think our packages cap out at 250. The biggest wedding that we had was right around that 250 number. And they set up in the hay barn, which is, I think it's 64 by 100, with plenty of room to move around. And of course, they had a photo booth, you know, and a dance floor and a head table. So there's plenty of room in that building. But that building is just a dirt floor, which has wood chips on it. Whereas the other building will comfortably house 150 people and has a concrete floor and it has big sliding barn doors on it. And then we've had some intimate weddings where they just rented the ranch house and they set up in the little lawn of the ranch house for 25 people, super intimate micro wedding. And they love that. There's room for out of town guests to sleep in the ranch house and just have a great time. And so we're trying to cater to all sizes from couples in the justice of the peace all the way to 250 people.
Do you or your wife, or do you have a team that helps with like decorating and that side of it, or is that on the bride and groom and their families?
So we essentially turn the property over to whoever is the event coordinator. And of course, we have some guardrails on stuff because, like, if you're putting push pins and nails and screws and roof joists and purlins on the wall and whatnot, there's not going to be any wood left by the time you're done. We do, once we finished with this current remodel job that we're doing, we're going to do some basic like fairy lights and that kind of thing that will just be set up for the whole season. But we really leave anything in addition to that to the wedding guests. So the wedding party comes in, they set up, have their event, and then tear down, and then they get their cleanup / security damage deposit when they're done.
So is there more to your team, or is it just kind of the two of you?
It's just the two of us. You know, we've entertained some people to help us with cleaning. The reality is my wife and I's standards are just so high that a lot of stuff gets overlooked because that's not how they keep their house. And we want it to be an exceptional experience when people come. We've had people that are professional travel bloggers that have come and stayed at our Airbnb, and they're like, this is the cleanest Airbnb we've ever been in, you know, and we've been doing this for 15 years, traveling all over the country and all over the world. And so that really reassures that all the work that we put in and the attention to detail that we do really means something when those are the comments that we get. So yeah, it's just my wife and I. And so I ranch full time and then wash sheets, change beds, scrubs toilets full time. And then my wife works a full time 5-day-a-week off-farm job. She's a registered nurse navigator for oncology at our local hospital. And then when she gets off of work, we team up and work together to finish turnovers or whatever it needs to be done to get ready for the next guests.
So I kind of want to talk about your long-term goal and vision for this, because you said you and your wife have been dreaming of buying this place for many, many years, and that the wedding venue, the Airbnb, the corporate retreat, that side of it was kind of a way to help make it cash flow, and you're almost there. Long term, do you want to keep up at this pace, or do you want these alternative revenue streams per se to help you build your beef business in other ways, or do other aspects of or help with other aspects of your operation?
For me, my 100% goal is to get my wife out of her off-farm job. She really is the vision for, so much of this, whether it's the art, whether it's the layout, whether it was, and we acquired most of our furniture secondhand from a Habitat Restore in the Roaring Fork. So when Aspen, which is a very affluent ski town, when they get rid of their furniture or they change it over the year, it goes into this secondhand store. And so beautiful leather couches and beautiful ornate headboards. And we've purchased a whole bunch of that stuff. And that's her vision. She's a person that sees that. And then, of course, I'm the labor to execute it. And so I would love for her to be able to walk away from the stress of her job. Her being an oncology nurse and dealing with people, who are dying of cancer, or people that you're able to treat and extend their life. It's just the level of intensity is crazy. And so I would love to be able to get her to where she can just focus on the short-term rentals. She's talking to people all day at work, but she's really more of an introvert. And so I'm almost always the forward-facing member of our team. And which I love to do. I have the gift of gab. I can talk about anything with anyone for any amount of time, because sharing information is like the connection that we still have. Now with social media and all that stuff, everyone's scrolling and liking and posting and all of that stuff. But that real human to human interaction is really how we had always communicated knowledge before there was technology. And so that's still super important to me. So I would love to be the forward-facing member of the team and have her being kind of on the back end, making the magic happen. That's really our long-term goal. And she feels the same way. The other thing that we did is we actually built a on-farm store. So in one corner of the shop, through a separate entrance, we have a self-serve on-farm store where we sell our beef and pork. We also have bees, so we sell our honey. We sell local coffee and tea and organic free-range eggs. So a lot of staples that you can buy in our store, which has helped us quite a bit, especially through the summer when we have a lot of guests. They'll buy pressed packages of patties to grill, or beef brats or pork brats to grill on our barbecue grills for our Airbnb units. And so that's helped us as well. So that was another innovation that came from my wife, because we've been talking about that for a year. We've been selling off the ranch, for years and years and years. But this is a place where people can come in and purchase it for themselves. And there's a square point of sale device, and they can swipe their card, or there's a cash box bolted to the wall that they can write a check or stuff cash. And so that's the other thing that's helped us with our cash flow gap as well.
So have some of those Airbnb guests who have bought from your store turned into long-term customers with your beef sales then?
They absolutely have. When we're processing in the fall, I deliver to the Front Range. I deliver to that Pueblo, Colorado Springs, Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, Greeley clients. So many of those people that have come over to get away from the city for the weekend purchase beef in our store, and then they get on our website and they order their beef for the next fall butcher. They put in a deposit. So they absolutely have. And that's the other thing too, is we're so disconnected from food producers when they get to shake their rancher's hand and have that interaction, and we talk through what we do and why we do it, and they get to pet the cows, and all of that stuff. They feel something that they knew was missing from their lives, that connection to their food, and they want to support those of us that are doing it the way that they want to have it done, which has been a great way to grow our beef business as well.
Do you have big ambitions for your operation, but feel like you get so caught up in the day-to-day fires that you are just spinning in circles? You aren't alone. I've been in your shoes and know just how frustrating it can be. That's why I created Move the Ranch Forward. It's a guide for ranchers. This guide is a PDF that contains the exact process my husband and I use to stay focused on our goals throughout the year, even when life throws us curveballs. You can access Move the Ranch Forward today at casualcattleconversations.com. So what's been the most rewarding part of having so many guests come through to use this location to say their vows and embark on that next journey of life?
Well, I'm always a milestone marker kind of guy. Like, I look at the day that my wife and I started officially dating, the day that we got married, the day that our children were born. And so to be a huge foundational portion of people's foundational milestones in their lives and help launching them out into the world as a newly formed couple is such a blessing. And for it to be a totally positive experience and a memorable experience that they want to then share with their friends and family, of the magic that really came from them choosing to do that at our place. It's the same thing with the short-term rentals. I don't know how many family vacations that they've come from the city and they've spent a week or 10 days just lounging on the porch and reading a book, and the kids running around in the fields and just enjoying like the peace and quiet. And the other thing is the night sky. People don't realize what the stars look like, because when you live in the city and you have all this light pollution, whereas here they're just like, oh my gosh, the stars are amazing. We've had plenty of guests on some of our supermoon nights where the moon is the biggest because it's the closest to us, and they're just like, we didn't know the moon was that big, and I'm like, well, it is, because of our position in the solar system and where we are, and being able to share those moments with them, because the ranch is close, but those people have their own space. Like, our home place is a quarter of a mile away, but the properties adjoin each other on two sides. And so it's a perfect, that they can have their own space, but we're close to be able to respond to, hey, we're out of water, or hey, we tripped a breaker, or whatever that happens to be. You don't have to drive across town to help them, so they feel like they're really, being taken care of.
Well, it's awesome. How do you promote the wedding venue aspect of it? Is that mostly social media? Are there other sites that you are a part of where people can see your listing?
Yeah, so we are on Wedding Wire and Wedding Pro, but interestingly enough, we haven't actually had a single wedding booking from that website, and it's actually pretty expensive to join. Most of our bookings have come from our website, rickranches.com is where we've gotten most of our bookings from. And then, of course, word of mouth. I mean, in small communities, everybody knows what everyone else is doing, which is part of the reason we did the open house, so they could come and see it. They didn't have to hear from a friend of a friend of a friend. They could come and walk through all the units, look at all of our barns, see what we've got going on. And when they could see the hay barn in its working clothes, because it's full of hay equipment, and so it's dual purpose, right? It's party time in the summer and fall when we're doing lots of weddings, and over the winter, it's full of hay equipment, to keep it out of the snow and keep it out of the sun. So really it's a lot of word of mouth. And I haven't spent money on advertising for our beef business. And typically when I open it up for deposits, I'm sold out within a month, because we process about 40 beeves a year. And we still sell some registered Angus bulls, some forage developed Angus bulls, but for the most part, we sell most of our calves into the direct-to-consumer beef market.
That is very interesting. So, Jason, as we kind of wrap up today, if there are other ranchers out there listening to this, wondering if starting to host weddings or retreats or just host guests in general as a feasible option for their lifestyle and ranch, what questions should they be asking themselves?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that a lot of people, why they farm and ranch is they don't particularly like people. They like cows and cow dogs, or they like sitting in a tractor. And so you have to know that, boy, there's going to be a lot of face-to-face interactions with people with expectations that you are going to have to set. The other thing is time management. I spend so much time texting, emailing, talking on the phone with people to try and walk them through what we do and what's available and what things look like for them, and also getting a feel for what their priorities are, because we want their special day to be perfect, or as close to perfect as we can. Because we bring in a portable bathroom trailer, so it has 2 bathrooms on it, flushing toilets and running water for washing hands, for any event that's over 50 people. And that's just because the septic systems that we have won't handle more people than that. And a lot of people are kind of finicky about porta potties. So instead of using the porta potties, they'll go use the toilets in the house. And the next thing you know, you're having to have your septic system pumped. And so that's another thing too, is like, just so you know, we have to have this reserved well ahead of time and all of those things. And I guess the other thing too is you have to look at what you are looking at for a bottom line. Many of my neighbors that are multi-generational cattle ranchers operate right at the poverty line as far as income, and that way they can qualify for all the subsidies for their health care as well as their income insurance. So they don't, if they make more than X amount of dollars, then you either have to spend money on a piece of equipment to keep from having to pay taxes. So that's the other thing too, is it's a very lucrative business. And so if that's where you choose to operate your ag business, making more money that you're going to have to try and hide somewhere may not be a good fit. Whereas for us, we've always been operating as a for-profit business. And we hope to soon get to the point where we're paying taxes on our income, with the idea that we're building a viable business that our kids can come back to if they want and live a comfortable life without having those money struggles that come with so many agricultural businesses. And I've had that conversations with some of my friends and neighbors. They're like, well, what do you do when it comes tax time? I'm like, I hope we make profit and I have to pay taxes. We put money in a bank account specifically for that. You call it the rainy day fund, but really it's like to keep the tax man off your back fund. So that's a real question.
Yeah, I think that there's a book called Profit First, I believe. And they talk about that in there, is like, when you get your income, you split it up where, this much is going to have to go to taxes. So you put that aside anyway, and then you split it out elsewhere, because if you're paying taxes, you're making money, and that's a good thing to a degree.
Totally. Absolutely.
Well, Jason, I really appreciate your time this morning and sharing your experience. Is there any final thought you want to share before we wrap up?
Well, I just encourage everyone to go out and shake the rancher's hand. I mean, if it weren't for mining, farming, and forestry, we would all be hungry, naked, and sober. And so you need to get out and shake your farmer's hand, because they really are the lifeblood of this country.
Absolutely. Well, folks, if you want more information about what Jason has going on, I will include a link to his website or information right in the show notes or description, whichever you podcast listeners want to call it today. Additionally, there will be links to any other resources that were mentioned throughout the show. Remember, the best way to support this podcast and all your other favorite podcasts is to leave a rating or review, and more importantly, share it with a friend who would gain some value with it. But with that, happy ranching, folks.